Everyone, and welcome to Ful-on, your Fulham-centric football podcast. Ash Woolford. Joining me today is AJ and Drew. AJ, how you doing, buddy?
Not too shabby. Transfer deadline day, folks.
Yeah, it's a lot to talk about on this one, isn't there? Drew, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, glad deadline day's over.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, we're here to talk about the Chelsea game on Saturday. We've given ourselves as much time as we can to recover, cool off, probably for the best. And we're also going to have a quick conversation about this transfer window and the players that have potentially signed yet, of which at the time we're currently sat recording, only one's actually fully been confirmed with a couple of deal sheets going in, but that may change as we're recording. We'll keep an eye on that as we go through. Let's start with the game on Saturday. We probably should talk about the performance before we talk about the controversy, because we know that the controversy is probably going to take up the most of what we have to speak about, because it's been most of the news all of the weekend. But let's talk about the performance. Let's talk about what we actually saw on Saturday from Fulham. AJ, we weren't too shocked with the team sheet. The only real shocking thing was maybe Castagna out on the right wing, but I think he did a good job. Surprised me actually how well he played. Um, Other than the team sheet itself, how do you feel the boys actually performed on Saturday?
Yeah, it was a good performance all round, to be honest. I think up until the 60th minute, or 60th-ish minute, we were well and truly into the game, but we'll get into the reason for that in a little while. It was a strong performance that's been overshadowed by a lot of things, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, it is annoying. Drew, you were at the game, particularly that first half performance. It was really, really good, right? Because we were a bit worried about what we were going to see performance-wise from Fulham in this game. I thought we really took the game to Chelsea. Like, I thought we did. I think we really, really did a good job of, you know, proving what we can actually do as a football club.
Yeah, it was as much about our attitude, our hustle, our intent, our endeavour. Chelsea just weren't at it. They were, quite frankly, awful. For a team that has spent so much, they didn't have the energy. They didn't have the fight. Fulham were just first to every ball and first to every second ball, really. Obviously, Chelsea would point to the fact that the lap went off, and that may have caused them problems. But let's not kid ourselves. Chelsea were well second best in that first half, and Fulham were just completely in control. I think one of the things that may have not drawn as much attention, and I think this is one of the things that may have benefited Fulham, is the fact that, ironically, we've been all, and we'll come on to this, Ash, I know we will, the lack of transfers in the early part of the window. I know that we're going to do a whole section on transfers, but those regular viewers will know that we've talked a lot about the fact that one of the reasons there was such frustration about Fulham's transfer window this summer was because we were told in January by Marco that targets had been picked. And we were all expecting we were going to hit the ground running when the window opened, and obviously that didn't happen. But ironically enough, I think one of the key differences between the two teams on Saturday was the fact that we were so familiar with each other, we're so familiar with our set styles, so familiar with our players. I mean, even the players that we had brought on last season, like ESR, had the benefit of being with the team for a year, and I think it really showed. I mean, setting aside the controversy, which we will come to, Fulham were about as good as you could have hoped for in the circumstances. They were absolutely excellent. You just can't fault them. Well, I say you can't fault them. Obviously, we'll get to the goal that we conceded, but by and large, they were excellent.
Yeah, I think that before we talk about the controversies and obviously the disallowed goal and all that sort of stuff, I'm very proud of the way the boys played. You know, Jack made the very good point up until the 60th minute, and I think that it was maybe one of those moments in the game where you just look around at each other and you go, lads, we're not just playing against ourselves here, and we're beat scoreline with 2 goals down. and everything that's happening is happening against us, and you just drop your heads. It's natural. It happens in sport. You see all the time. It's a bit frustrating when professionals do it, yes, but I've got no blame for any of the players dropping their heads at that moment, because it must have felt like the world was completely against them. And there's no shock there. But as good as the performance was, and as good as I was really happy with our intensity, with our play, I was really happy to see Josh King sort of play with the freedom we were hoping we were probably going to see from him on Saturday, proven by the goal, that's cruelly been taken away from him, which we'll talk about again, as I keep saying, in a minute. There are some negative points play from ourselves that we need to really sort out if we're going to get anything out of this season. We've conceded another goal from a set piece that is poor defending from us. As frustrated as you are that corner's been given in added time on added time, it's only been added on because of absolutely rubbish refereeing and stuff like that. And previously, you still got to stay alert and concentrating, especially when there's only a minute left of half time. You should really, really know that you're about to get a break. You should be alert, and we just weren't. And Chelsea took advantage of that. They've got a good squad, Chelsea. We know how good they are at attacking. When they have their moments, they have their moments. But we conceded from a corner because we weren't paying attention. And as frustrating as the penalty was to give away, it's no real shock to me. We know we're frustrated. We'll talk about the controversies, other stuff they're having around it. But, we've come away with a 2-0 loss in a game where we didn't lose that game 2-0. I don't think we physically or mentally lost that game 2-0. Scoreline-wise, we definitely shouldn't have lost 2-0. And if the goal would stand, then shouldn't have been 1-0 to Fulham going into that half-time. Who knows where we would have been for that second? We don't know how Chelsea would have reacted to being 1-0 down. We just don't know. All we know is that, we put in a good performance, and that, as much as we should keep our heads held high about that, because Chelsea's going to be Stamford Bridge is going to be a difficult place for people to go this year, especially if they're going to keep giving gifts by officials. That it makes it hard. Now we have to talk about the controversies. We can't not do this episode and not talk about VAR and Rob Jones and whatever the hell it was that happened on Saturday. That called it bias, Big Six bias, called it absolutely shambolic refereeing, called it out for whatever it was. It's the most frustrating thing, and I think the thing that frustrates me the most about it is I'm not shocked that it happened. I'm upset. I was angry that it happened, but I'm not shocked at all that it happened. Let's talk about the goal that should stood and didn't stand. Drew, you say you were at the game, completely unaware of what happened, right? Completely unaware of why the game was back. Completely unaware. What was it like in the stadium when they were, they stopped the VAR? Did you even notice what was going on?
We saw Chalobah fall over, but we just thought he'd run into run into Muniz. But no one was watching that because everyone was watching the break. When I think it was Berge, wasn't it, that put King through? Gorgeous ball. King twisted Tosin inside and out and then put the ball in, and we just all went mental. I mean, it was the stuff dreams were made of. 18-year-old, making his first appearance at Stamford Bridge for their local rivals, and he scores to put his team up, the team he's been at since he was like 6 years old. I mean, it was the stuff of legend. And then VAR check, and no one could work out what the VAR check was for. Literally, no one could work out what the VAR check was for. And that goal, I mean, Chelsea talk about, oh yeah, we scored 2. That was the only goal scored from open play. Yeah, it was the only. I mean, and it's difficult to describe. It was just completely nonsensical. They talked about Muniz making a careless challenge, but Muniz wasn't making a challenge. He was making a manoeuvre with the ball. It was Chalobah that was making a challenge. Muniz spun. I don't know where he's meant to put his foot. I mean, it's not like he was aiming for Chalobah. I mean, in everyday life, I mean, we've gone through lives. There's not one person alive that hasn't accidentally trodden on someone's foot. It just happens, I mean, the outpouring of criticism, I mean, has been massive. And I know this isn't a Sunderland pod, but a Burnley pod, but I mean, what happened at Old Trafford, and Ash, this ties into what you've already spoken about. You know, what happened at Old Trafford to Burnley when their player got flagged for offside because his shoulder was beyond the last man? I mean, is that what we're doing now? Yeah, the guidance was meant to be clear and obvious. Yeah, I say this, and I'm sorry for our regular viewers who've heard me say this before. If you're spending 5-6 minutes reviewing a decision, then it's not clear and obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it fails the guidance. I mean, Fulham, to be fair to them, they still carried on playing really well after that point. And then you get the controversy of the minimum of 8 minutes added time. No one knew where 8 minutes came from. I mean, there was in total 16 minutes. 16 minutes. So that's nearly a quarter. Well, it's over a quarter of a half of football extra played. Where did that come from? Where did that come from?
It came from Liam Delap being injured, and then the 6.5 minutes that it took for him to make up the VAR call. You know, my frustration with the extra time, and I'll get AJ's view on the whole incident in a minute, is the whole VAR stuff in a second. Is that, you know, I've heard 4 or 5 different people go, it was added time because you can't call half time if someone wins a corner. I'm just going to remind everybody right now. Last year, Fulham played Chelsea at Craven Cottage. Fulham got a corner in the 47th minute when there was meant to be 47 minutes added on. The referee blew up straight away. He awarded the corner and then blew up. Like, we know you can, because we've seen referees do it. Right, the fact that it was added time, and the added time came because, according to the referee, he was speaking to a Fulham player, explaining to him why he'd let the first corner be given. And, you know, I did the same thing that Marco Silva said he'd done. I went back and I watched that game. The ball doesn't go out of play for the whole of injury time. So minimum of 8 minutes. Okay, other than the 2 corners they got, the ball didn't go out of play. So where have you got the extra minute from? You pulled it out your ass because the big team are attacking, and we all know that. AJ, let me get your view on VAR, right? And we know how frustrating it is, and how it's completely let us down on Saturday. Because I don't think it's just let Fulham down on Saturday. I think it's let football down on Saturday, right? But what are your views on it, especially in the game in the moment?
It's a difficult one for me because I'm not typically anti-VAR, but there's a time and a place for it, and frankly, there's a lot more wrong with the set of rules in football than there is with VAR's interpretation of them. One, I will go to the clear and obvious remark. Is it clear and obvious? No, VAR shouldn't be involved. That's where they draw their line. Then I've got a separate problem. Consistency amongst refereeing in the Premier League. The exact same technique, skill, whatever you want to call it, was used by Bruno Fernandes, and someone put their foot underneath his. He stepped on someone's ankle, he fell over, and it was given as a penalty to Manchester United. That happens to Chelsea, where Chelsea's player puts their foot underneath Muniz, who is mid-air turning, and they win the foul. You can't crash your car into somebody else and say, you've hit me. That's not how it works. Like, if you put yourself in the way of oncoming danger, that's your fault. That's not clear and obvious. It's not a foul, and it frankly is just ridiculous that there's no consistency amongst the two. And then, thirdly, I've got an issue with the rule set of football in general. Rules, by definition, should be black and white. They should be, this is allowed, this isn't allowed. There is too much subjectivity with the rules in football. It shouldn't be, okay, this is allowed unless it's in the box and it's a defender, or if it gets touched by a certain player first, or there's a line on an arm for a handball, or it has to be more than 6 yards away. You start adding subjectivity to rules, it doesn't work. because you will have different levels of subjectivity from different people, and it just frankly does not work. They need to be black and white. There's a reason goal line technology works. It's black and white. Was it over the line? Yes. Goal. Was it over the line? No, not goal. Black and fucking white. Simple. That's what rules in football should be. You start adding subjectivity. You start adding, oh, it's only the first minute of the game. Oh, it's the 90th minute of the game. No. If someone breaks an ankle in the first minute of the game, it's a red card. Like, these things need to be consistent, and I'm tired of it.
Yeah, for me, right, I'm glad that we waited till Monday night to record this, right? Because if we do the post game quick react that Jack and Carl happily did for us, because I was so livid with it, right? The reaction of it is hilarious to me because I've heard so many different people in the media talk about it. You got that mad woman from Sky who tried to claim that the only reason why everyone was upset about it was because it was Josh King who was 18 who scored the goal, and if it was Muniz who scored, no one would care. It was only justified the fact that the next day she was the one who had to then, who then had to read it out on Sky that that they'd apologise for it. But let's talk about the actual incident and the actual incidents in the game that are frustrating. There's a reason why people who support teams that aren't in the top six always moan about Big Six bias, and teams who support Big Six teams don't understand what it is because they don't see it, because they're the ones who get the decisions. It feels like in certain games, in certain moments, right? And we saw it last week against Man United with the penalty that was given, and we saw it on Saturday with the goal being disallowed, where it almost feels like VAR are looking at everything that goes against the big teams to try to find any way they physically can to help them. Because I can guarantee you, if Chelsea had scored that goal on Saturday, the VAR wouldn't have even looked at it. The referee is 10 yards away from it when it happens. Doesn't even wave play on, which means he doesn't even see it as a tackle or a foul. He just sees it as a natural incident that happens in the game and keeps playing. For that to then be considered a clear and obvious error, for it to be looked at, is rubbish, because it's not a clear and obvious error. You're completely right in the whole, if anything, Muniz is the one who's, yes, he stepped on his foot, Chalobah's foot, but Chalobah's the one defending. So he's the one trying to make the tackle. If anything, he's not made contact with the ball, which means he's fouled Muniz. Right? That's the rule. Like, if you're going to go black and white like you want to, the rule is he's trying to tackle the player and he's not touched the ball. Therefore, he's fouled the player. So forget the fact that the player's on the ball. And we know this is the fact and truth because last year we gave away a penalty in the 93rd minute against Man City away, because the exact same thing happened where Kevin De Bruyne stood on Anthony Robertson's foot, fell over and got a penalty. It's the inconsistency of how they subject these rules, which is the frustration. We haven't even started talking about Chelsea's penalty that they actually got and some of the things that haven't going up into that. The fact that there's had to be an apology from the PGMO, I don't care. We don't need an apology for it. The apology does absolutely fuck all for us. Doesn't give us points that we deserve. Doesn't give Josh King the biggest moment in his football career so far back. Right, the thing that would have not just for me, it's always going to be a legend for it. For me, it's a valid goal, and that'd always be considered his first ever Fulham goal. But on paper, it won't be, and it should be, and it should be the most perfect moment for a player who's been at the club for as long as he has. The one that we all believe is our next big thing. It's been completely ruined by the moment. Football as a whole is being ruined by the moment. What's got me over the last couple of days is, and I hate to agree with Scott Parker, but I have to, it's going to get to the point within the year where no fan is going to celebrate any goal that's scored. Especially if you're a smaller club playing against the bigger club, because you know that VAR are just going to look for any reason and any reason at all that they can go back and cancel it out. This isn't the NFL, right? This isn't This isn't baseball. This isn't sports where you can bring every single moment and every single thing down to fine margins and go, yeah, I can give it for that. And it depends on how the referee feels that day, whether or not they give it, or the video assistant referee and how they give it. It's not.
Sorry, Ash. Anyone who watches the NFL, they still moan about referees. You're never going to get away from it. The issue that I have with it is the fact that they are someone 200 miles away sitting in a room with a few monitors is micro refereeing the game. It's destroying it as a product. It's destroying it as an experience. Now, I take what you say about, other sports, but another big problem in English football, and you could tell with Rob Jones when he announced it to the crowd on Saturday, it's not public speaking is one of people's biggest fears. Yeah. You give someone a microphone in front of 40,000 fanatics. Yeah. And ask them to explain themselves. You can imagine what's going through their mind. Now, I'm not trying to defend Rob Jones. I'm just trying to explain that it's a very different culture. Allied to the point that AJ's made about the sheer inconsistency. And you're quite right, Ash. We've been done in consecutive weeks because it wasn't just the penalty against Man United, if you remember. Bassey got pushed over in the box for their goal. But, that was perfectly legitimate. Wasn't just waved away. Man United got two massive decisions in their favour and that saved them in that game. And the top six bias, I'm afraid, is palpable. I mean, in terms of AJ's point, and I agree with him, the subjectivity is an issue. For any rule or any law to be effective, there has to be what we call the test of certainty. People must understand what it means. Yeah. Now, this basically, bear in mind, sorry, folks, my background as a lawyer, which is why I'm going into this, but it's basically crystallising what AJ said, because AJ's right. AJ's right. For any law to be effective, what we call the test of certainty, people must understand it. But every time you pass a law, people test the law. That's why we have appeal courts. But in football, we can't appeal that decision. It's made on the spur of the moment. Yeah. And the guidance that we've been given, the clear and obvious test, isn't being applied.
Nope.
So we end up in this mess. I mean, I walked out of that stadium, and this is the first time I've left a football ground, and I actually would quite happily have seen the back of VAR. And we should only have assisted goal line technology and offside decisions. And the offside decision, if an attacking player's foot is at least level with the last defender's foot, then he should be onside. None of this, his head's over the line, his elbow's over the line, garbage.
Yard.
Yeah, that's it. Because the way it's going, I mean, Rob Jones, did you see him at half time shooing Silver away? I mean, Jesus. Because I don't know whether it's because the man's arrogant or the man realised he dropped the biggest of bollocks. I genuinely don't know. But VAR in its current form is not fit for purpose. So we either scale it back completely, or we bring in some clear rules. Maybe, and Ash, you've talked about the NFL. You'll both be aware each coach has a challenge flag.
Yeah.
1.5. Yeah, it may be. I'm not saying this is perfect. But it might be a thing. Each coach has a challenge a half. If they lose that challenge, then they can't challenge anything else. If they win that challenge, then they can keep the flag and challenge something else. Do you know what I mean? But we came away from the game and we're talking about decisions. We're not talking about football.
Yeah, well, let's just quickly hit on the Chelsea penalty as well. Cessus jumped out. He's put his arm out. They're saying it's unnatural position. I don't think it is. If you're jumping in the air and you're bending your body, your arm's got to go somewhere, right? But Pedro handles the ball before it, and they're trying to say it isn't a handball from Pedro because his arm's not in an unnatural position. But I'm sorry, unless you're Adolf Hitler, that's a natural arm position, right? That's not a natural arm position. The ball's kicked at him, yeah, but there's no difference there. But my biggest gripe, and it's the one that no one was talking about it, and I even noticed that when you, Drew, people who weren't aware, you went on to Talk Sport after the game, right? And you were talking about it with, Jason Cundy, who, for surprising me, was actually very much believing that Fulham was screwed over on Saturday. Caicedo steps on Alex Iwobi's foot in the build-up to that play.
Yep.
So if one's given as a foul on the halfway line, why is everyone not given? And if anything, the Caicedo one's worse because he isn't in control of the ball and he's looking at Alex Iwobi. Whereas Muniz was in control of the ball and doing a bit of skill. So there's no consistency within games, not even across the board or across, from week to week. There's no consistency in one game for it to be that way. And I felt so bad for Marco Silva on Saturday. And I felt so bad for Josh Gale. But my heart was broken for Josh Gale on Saturday. And for the fact that TNT Sport, did their very best to wash over the whole incident. But for the last 15 minutes of the game on Saturday, all they were trying to do was basically remind people, you can't blame Chelsea because of the way the VAR's gone against Fulham today. Well, no, you can't blame Chelsea. You can, however, blame the system, which is there that seems to back up and help these big teams in games because it happens too often. Marco Silva did a great job on Saturday of not losing his rag because we all know how badly he can and we know how emotional he is, right? And I said it on Saturday, and I said it very clearly on Saturday that he's a better man than me because I would have pulled my team off. I would have taken the players off the pitch. I mean, whatever, because we're not playing against 11 men. We're not just playing against 12. It's clear we're playing against 13. And it says an awful lot that the guy who's VAR in the game who's due to referee the Liverpool Arsenal game was removed straight away from it for the next day because they know how much of a bollock they dropped in that game. The problem isn't even Fulham were hard done by on Saturday. The problem is that this happens way too often. And it happens way too much in games where bigger clubs get decisions that smaller clubs do not get. And I know there's people who watch this who don't support Fulham who might hear it and go, you're just a little club like moaning about it because you feel like you've been hard done. No, I'm not. Look at the offside goal for Burnley on a Saturday. Look at some of the other things that have been given during games. The inconsistency week to week from referees is laughable. It's embarrassing. And for the best league in the world, we have third-rate referees. And it's about time the FA started looking outside of England more than the one time they've done it to bring in better refs from Europe to referee our games because it's just a joke. And, we go away from a game on Saturday, all of us mentally head on Mars, angry at the system, falling out of love with the game, proud of our club and the way that we played, yes. But, I don't know about you guys, but I could never watch the game of football again on Saturday night. I was so angry with it. I was literally seething. It was a good job I went away and I was away with my family because if I wasn't, I would have been sat home stewing and probably wanted to punch through brick walls. It was ridiculous how bad it was. Guys, before we sort of quickly hit on the transfer market, I know we've already overrun a bit, but I want to just talk about, can we just give a man the match for Saturday, please? Drew, can you just give me a man the match for Saturday?
It wasn't Leno, despite him saving us a couple of times, because the goal we conceded against Chelsea was a carbon copy of the goal we conceded against Man U. Leno's got to do more in his 6-yard box. I'm sorry, he's got to make it his own. I'm going to give it to King. Berge and Lukic are outstanding, but I'm going to give it to King. It's no consolation prize. And Josh, if you're watching, I'm really, really sorry. You deserve so much more. But you really put about £400 million worth of midfielders on their ass. You're great.
Yeah, it's not great. AJ, how about yourself, mate? Can I get your man of the match for Saturday?
I'm just going to have to go King by default because, to be honest, so much of that game is washed away from my memory. All of the good football that we played, I genuinely can't remember much of because of the controversy involved in the game. And every time I think back to the match, all I can think about is the controversy. So I just have to give it to King and say, in my eyes, you scored a goal, mate. And frankly, I think when things like that, where the PGMOL have issued a apology, the goal should be awarded. You can't change the result, fine, but you can give the kid a goal to add to his personal tally and to add to his individual statistics.
Yeah, it's only Josh King. It can only be Josh King, and it's heartbreaking what's happened to him on Saturday. He's been completely screwed over. It is what it is. We can't do anything about it. Welcome to playing for one of the clubs that aren't the big boys. It's what happens. You'll get used to it, I would like to say, but you don't. It just gets more annoying, more frustrating, and more heartbreaking the more you go through it. The problem is that we went through years and years and years of having dog shit referees that gave Man United and Liverpool and Arsenal absolutely everything during games, to now having a system where it's set up that not only do they financially get helped out by the FA with PSA rules and all that sort of rubbish, they're also being helped out during games for things that are happening there and then. It's frustrating. It is what it is. Lads, we could do a whole another episode on the transfer window. Let's just hit on the transfer window this year quickly, and we probably will, on our first episode, have a proper rundown of the whole of the transfer window for us. The episode will probably be about 5 minutes long. We've done nothing. Right, we wait until the last day. We've got Chukwueze in. He's done. And I believe that the two deal sheets that had gone in for Tyreek George and Kusu Ascara are off. They're not going through. So it is only Kevin that we're waiting for to be announced by the club. Bringing two players in when you are desperate to rebuild on a season. Well, let's forget about the goalkeeper doesn't count. He's not going to change things during the game. But it's frustrating, right? And I know the club are going to try to spin it as we've kept our best players and we've kept Muniz and we've done all that sort of stuff. But I would say, how do we move on from it as a season? It's just proof that if it's ever needed, that there needs to be a systematic change at the club in the way that the club runs transfer windows. Because two players in, yes, we need them. Yes, we need the bit of extra there. It's not what Marco wanted. And we're now I think pretty much we've now lost Marco at the end of the season because he's not being backed in the way he deserves to be. But, true, I know you could talk for hours on it, but, it's just, I think it's just the final proof that everyone needed that, those who are in the brains trust, as we like to put it, they all really need to be replaced or move on or just, be sacked by their dad.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we've got a Nepo baby who's a part-time director of football, who's more interested in, his men in tights. I don't think in a modern football club, I think the days of having one person that it all sort of revolves around, the obvious example in recent history is Sir Alex Ferguson, because he was Manchester United and the club. I mean, he imprinted his own desire, and his own attitude into every atom of that club. I think that's going to be the exception rather than the rule now. We need you're quite right, Ash. The problem isn't Marco Silva. The problem is the structure of the club. I mean, what's really annoying, and both of you know this because you've talked about it, this was eminently predictable. Yeah. At the beginning of the transfer window, that we were going to be, deals were going to collapse because we ran out of time. Yeah. We have now brought in two wingers. Kevin's yet to be confirmed as I'm speaking, but we think we've got him in. We've brought in two wingers. We have brought in a backup goalkeeper, but we don't have the extra midfielder that Marco wanted. Arguably, he might have wanted a couple. Bear in mind, we lost Pereira. We lost Vinicius at the end of last season. We knew that we were down to two strikers. We knew that we needed a third striker. Hasn't brought in a third striker. So essentially, we now have no real cover in the midfield. We have no cover outside of Muniz and Jimenez. And we've got two wingers. I mean, this club is meant to be a professional football club. It's meant to be a professional football club. I mean, those of us that lived through the 2018 summer transfer window, which still, I mean, Ash, you smile because it's the only thing you can do, mate, because otherwise you'll cry. Yeah? The last week of the window, we brought in about 6 players, and there's not one person in this pod right now that didn't think that was laying the groundwork for a disaster. And what happened? What happened? Jokanovic spent the first 10 games trying to work out who his best 11 was. You know, you either wait too late and you bring in too many players, then you've destroyed team chemistry, or you wait too late and you can't get players in which case you're putting pressure on the ones that are already there and stretching your depth. I don't care about, it's a difficult market. It's not a difficult market. Marco himself said we've been too passive. It's not about the market. Other teams managed to do it. And it for me, it strikes at the fact that the people in charge really are not 100% committed to the club anymore. They've built the stand. There's going to be no further development. Marco's in the last year of his contract. Let's just bumble along, retain our Premier League status if we can, and then see if anyone comes in to buy us. I mean, it's just shambolic, mate.
Yeah, look, AJ, I'll let you have the final word on the transfer window before we wrap up on this one, because we are going to, on Thursday night when we sit down and record for our episode on Friday, we're going to have a proper breakdown of the squad and where it lies now, and where we might have dropped a ball on it. But what are your frustrations like? Also, just to be fair, Kevin has now been confirmed, by the way. So Kevin and Chuck are in. They've both been confirmed. Announcements made, but yeah. Final words from you about our transfer window before we wrap this one up.
Shite. What more do you want me to say? Honestly, it's just been shite. Like, you can't go the entire window and expect to get all your business done on the final day. You can't even do that on FIFA because the countdown will stop you getting business over the line. So why the fuck does our director of football think that he can do it personally with real life and real people with real needs that need to travel to real locations to do real medicals? He's a fucking idiot and it needs to be stopped.
Yeah, look, we're going to end this one here. We've really doubled our run over, but it is what it is. We have to speak about, obviously, being transfer deadline day. Everyone watching, obviously, you'll know this because it was last night. Just a quick heads up for what's coming out this week from us. Obviously, it is an international break this weekend, so there is no Fulham coming up. So we have a couple of extra episodes coming out. The next instalment of FFC and me, an interview with a Fulham fan called Matty P, will be out on Wednesday. Thursday, we'll see the first episode of the brand new Fulham women's podcast out. I will be joining the gang over on that podcast with their inaugural episode, just to sort of check in, see how they are, see how we're doing. We apologise that one's been slightly delayed from a podcast point of view. They've just been trying to make sure that they were set up and ready for the season and to give the coverage that the ladies deserve. So we'll go from that. And on Friday, we will have another episode of Full-on out where we're going to discuss this transfer window in full and where the squad are and exactly where we believe Marco Silva may have been let down by the club transfer window wise and where we might be like this season. It's going to be a fun one, I'd imagine, to record because we've all been screaming since January about quite a lot of those positions, and it's frustrating that it hasn't come that way. But hey, not really much more to say other than fuck VAR and come on you whites.